and welcome to our special knife reviews. This is Evan and this is my daddy, so I high power.
Welcome to Knife Reviews. I'm Joshua Hightower and this is Evan. Say hi.
Hi.
We appreciate you being here. Today we're going to be doing the Schrade SCHF9 in our bushcraft line of knife reviews. As with all of our bushcraft knives, we're now doing 6 categories: chopping, batoning, cutting, feather sticking, spine scraping, ferrule rod usage, and then our last newest addition is fit and finish, which will have everything from the aesthetics, the look of the blade, how it's finished, and the handle, how it's finished and how it feels, and how the overall blade feels in the hand, the weight, distribution, things like that. We really appreciate being here, so stay with us, and we look forward to doing a nice knife review for you. So the SCHF9 is a 6.4 inch blade, a 5.6 inch handle. The handle is a Creighton. It's like a rubberized kind of mold injected handle. It's actually pretty comfortable. It's a very beefy, heavy knife at 1 pound. It's made out of an 8CR13 MOV stainless steel. It's a high carbon stainless steel. It's advertised as a hollow grind. It's like a saber with a hollow edge on it.
Oh, that was massive. Whoa.
So that is a 2.5 inch thick log off of a very seasoned red cedar. Chops through that very, very well. It has a very large grip on it. It has a very large handle, and it has that drop in the handle which allows you to choke back on it to chop very well. It has a lot of heft into it, and it's very weight forward, which is very good for chopping. It actually, for such a big blade, it has very even weight distribution throughout it. So even though it is very heavy forward, it has a very heavy handle, which evens it out and gives you a very good, solid, and even chop.
How do you set up this tank? Whoa. This is kind of fun.
This has a very large knot in it. This limb goes all the way through it and gives you a very large knot. This chopped right through it. The blade has no nicks or dings in it. The plumb line is very straight. It's a very well balanced knife. For chopping and batoning, I'm very happy with it. Because it's so heavy but very well balanced, you have a very strong grip on it, very safe grip, and allows you to get a lot of power into your swings. And it's so heavy duty that batoning is really no problem for it at all. I would like it to have a little bit more thickness down the blade. It's very thick up top, but their saber is so high, the saber grind is so high that it thins out into that hollow grind, which doesn't give it as much blade thickness down here towards the actual edge as it does up on the spine. So it doesn't actually push the wood out as much as you would think on a blade this large. And I think that that's a little bit of a negative for a knife that's so big that's designed to be a little bit better chomper. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 on chopping and batoning.
8 out of 10.
Okay, watch out, buddy. So it cuts well enough to be able to create a bow drill kit. What I've noticed though is that when you are cutting with the blade this big and trying to do the more intricate stuff where you just want to shave off little pieces, you do have to choke up quite a bit on it, but it's got that nice little choil on it, so it gives you a little bit better control over the knife. And with the recurve, you're pushing that wood up into where that recurve catches so that it cuts there. So there is a learning curve, being able to use that recurve appropriately to cut with. But once you get it, it actually does quite well. What I found also is that it actually cuts much better towards the top, I don't know, 1.5 inches right there. So it's an all right cutter when you're doing carving little wood pieces. Here I have 30 wraps of Gorilla Tape. It's a little test I always like to do. So it's cut through the Gorilla Tape all right. And then the last test we like to do with our knives for cutting is a very tightly wound, hardened cotton rope. And what you can see, it'll push through it about half the way. But it's much more suited for brute force cutting. Now if you cut up here, you can see it'll cut through that pretty well. So for cutting, it did a pretty good. So for cutting, it did a pretty good job. It was adequate when it came to carving wood. It did a very good job when it came to cutting cargo tape, and it was above average when it came to cutting a real thick, hardened cotton rope. All the same characteristics that I talked about with batoning and chopping come through even more highlighted on cutting because it is so heavy. You have to choke up and use that choil, but what that does is it puts this lip right here right on your knuckle and the palm, and it makes it pretty uncomfortable after a long period of time cutting like that. So it does have some issues there, but as for cutting, it does pretty good. We're going to give that an 8 out of 10 on cutting. So it's doing the scraping of that bark really well. And then for scraping wood, if you can see that, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's scraping off lots of wood shavings. As you can see, it's getting plenty of wood shavings off. I have found that this finger guard, when you're turning it around and you're scraping with it, this thing is right in the middle of where you want your hand to be, so you almost have to use the choil, and then it puts your hand off grip when you're doing the backwards grip on it, or reverse grip. So that does kind of get in the way a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of that finger guard, what we'll go into on the fit and finish. But for spine scraping, it does as good as you could ask of it. It's got a very nice spine. It seems like it has a very decent heat treat. For spine scraping, we're going to give that a 9 out of 10 on overall spine scraping. It's a little hard to get around on it because that finger guard makes it a little bit more difficult. So you'll get some feather stick out of it. So a little feather stick. It's just so bulky. It's not very nimble. It doesn't have a lot of agility, so it's more difficult to do it. Sometimes you have to brace it and do the pull method to get a great feather stick. That way you don't fatigue your hand. But it does it. This is definitely the part where it's not shining as well as it may have in other spots. So for feather sticking, we're going to give it a 6 out of 10. ultimate test. Can it get some bark going with your ferrule rod?
You might put another one on this. You might put another one on this. Okay, watch out! Fire!
Hold on. Let it burn. Let it burn. Let it burn. So with ferrule rod usage, we're going to give that a 9 out of 10.
Yep.
I think if you took that coating off just a little bit on the back and give it just a little bit of a light stroke with some sandpaper, you'd have that as sharp as you need it for a ferrule rod. So for the last category, which is fit and finish, go around. We want to talk about the handle. I do not like this finger guard and hand guard. It gets in the way. I'd rather it just be kind of straight, and it'd give you better usage of the choil. And this on the back, I just don't like it at all. It just gets in the way. It's not. There's no purpose for it. It doesn't serve. In fact, it takes away from having a little bit more spine to work with. The handle material, I've batoned it a little bit on the back just to put it, and it's already separating. If you can see that it's separating. So it's not on there as well as I'd like it. I know it's got those removable pins on it. I'm not a fan of removable pins. I think it's dangerous. If you've seen me talk about any of the Becker knives, I just don't like the handles at all. The blade is very, you can see it's not bad on
Camera.
Yeah, it's not bad with that, but it's very heavy, and with that heaviness, you'd expect it to chop a little bit better, and I just don't like the design of the blade. The ergonomics overall are okay. This finish is fine. It doesn't really get in the way too much. You can do just fine with your ferrule rod on it, so I'm not really worried about that. I don't like the handle material. I know it's supposed to be grippy, but it really just kind of digs into your skin after prolonged use. I don't know. I'm just kind of neutral on it, on the design. I really like recurves. You know, my favorite knife is a Diving Sparrow Wind River, which is a big recurve blade. This one, it's got the characteristics of a good recurve, so it's, you know, it does well. Keep in mind, we're talking about a $35 knife, so I'm trying to balance that real cheap knife with how it handles in a big knife world. So for 35 bucks, you're getting a steal of a knife. This thing does great. For recurve, there's not a cheaper recurve that performs this well that I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of knives. So I'm real happy with it. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10 on fit and finish. Once again, for Evan, wave, and I, Joshua Hightower, we really appreciate you being here on Knife Reviews. We hope you enjoyed it. If you get a chance, we'd really appreciate it if you go and like our Facebook page, Knife Reviews, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Knife Reviews, share the videos, like the videos, leave us comments. Let us know what you think about the categories, the fit and finish, all that kind of stuff. That's something that means a lot to us, getting feedback. And even the negative feedback, it gives us ideas on how to greatly to improve how we do this, because all we want to do is give you an idea of what the knife can do and how it performs in the price range that it's set at. We really do appreciate your time. We hope you have a wonderful day. Stay safe and God bless.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. What do you keep doing now?